is there anything else, folks? We have an agenda this afternoon. John Devine from Atlas World has very kindly had his arm twisted, and Pete has arranged to talk us through some temperature screening solutions for not only COVID-19, but a range of other things like fire detection and all sorts of good things that we can use, imaging and temperature measurements and all sorts of things that we can use. So that's going to be quite interesting. And somewhere in the waiting room, Tony Mullen and Connor Hamill should be lurking around there, and they're going to try and do a video virtual tour for us on the Andor site on terms of COVID-19 security. And then Justine will give us an update on the world of HSE&I. And if there's any other business now anybody wants to raise or discuss, now's a good time to bring it up and mention it to us.
Yeah, I suppose one thing, Jim, with the vaccine on the horizon, one of the questions that we're getting asked internally is, will waste workers as an essential service get any priority? You know, will they get any priority on the list for vaccinations?
I think the answer to that one, David, is we haven't heard.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, we'll come back to that one in a moment or two.
One other thing, Jim, we were talking about work-related stress last week. Would there be any sort of possibility that the waste industry could measure the stress through the HSE&I management standards tool to see what the stress levels and how people are doing with regards to the waste industry? Would it be a good exercise for them all to get on board and look and see what we can do and what we could put in place to reduce stress in the waste industry? Is that something anybody would be interested to sort of measure ourselves and benchmark against different organisations, maybe other countries in the world who are working in the same industry, and see how we're sitting at the minute?
Okay, well, we'll let folks think about that one, Nicola, and we'll float that one under any other business.
Okay.
Okay. Just to add on that, I know last week there had been a lot of discussion and a lot of interest in the HSE management standards following Claire and David's presentation. In terms of our group, what we're doing at the minute, we look after quarries and concrete as well. So we're actually running Zoom line manager workshops for quarry managers. The first one of those is tomorrow, and we have another one in January and February of next year. Now, following the interest last week, I have spoke to Martin and that team about the potential for actually having a workshop specifically for the waste industry. And that's something that we're going to try and get a date for next year. It may be around springtime. So if there is interest amongst this group to attend that, which would be more in depth and detail than what you heard last week, then do let us know. But I think it would be a runner, and I do think there would be a good bit of interest amongst the group. Yep. And what that would do is it would actually then show you how to carry out your own survey within your own workplace then as well. How to implement the HSE management standards and carry out a stress risk assessment for your business. With regards to doing a benchmark across industry, that would really be dependent on, I suppose, the time and resources that the mental health and wellbeing team in the HSE and I have. But it's something that I could take back to them. But what we are certainly planning on doing is running a workshop for the waste industry.
Great.
Right, we're ahead of the posse. Okay, folks.
Would you like me to run through these thermal cameras then?
Yes, go for it then, John. Thank you very much indeed for your time once again.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, folks, and hello to you all. Peter, I'm disabled from sharing my screen, which I will need to do here. Sorry.
Hi there. All right. John, if you want to try that now.
Okay, folks, so look, welcome to this presentation where I'm just going to take a quick run through some of the thermal products that we offer. I work for a company called Hike Vision. We're a Chinese security product manufacturer, predominantly CCTV, but we do thermal cameras and access control products and things like that. And we've a lot of thermal solutions out there at the moment now. And over the course of the past year, our thermal screening products have been very popular for obvious reasons. So I'm going to take a quick run through some of the thermal products that we have for screening of staff, if that's of interest to you, and some other products that we have that maybe would help manage fire risks on a waste site, etc. Okay. The thing that I would move on to here is obviously thermal cameras. So, well, Hikvision's journey, we basically have been creating our own thermal cameras since 2008, and obviously, without going into too much detail about the technical things here, about nanometer detectors and things like that, our rise to success within the thermal sphere has been meteoric. Like we're biggest in the world now in terms of providing these products, you know. We did provide them before 2008, but we were actually working with a third party for the manufacture of them. But now we have that all in-house, you know, and we're continually doing more research and pushing things forward in that market. So the first one that I wanted to look at was the live body temperature measurement solution. So we have a number of products that would help out in this scenario, okay? But the core principle of how this works is with thermal detection, every material or object or person known to man emits a certain amount of radiation. This radiation can be detected as a heat signature. And how thermal cameras work in a simple way is that they take this infrared radiation and they turn it into a visual image where they can provide the temperature measurement and you can see what's going on, you know. So we've created these new, more accurate cameras about a year ago or just over a year ago, which can be used to detect elevated skin surface temperature, which may indicate presence of a fever in the person that's in front of the camera. So what you do, you know, how it advantages normal scenarios is that it's highly efficient because people can go in front of it quite quickly compared to using a standard thermometer. And obviously it improves safety as well because you're cutting out on the need for close contact with the thermometer operator. So basically what you'll be doing is you're creating a screening channel. So you're moving people in front of the camera and giving the camera the opportunity to measure their temperature. Key thing that we would say as well is that if there is an alarm created, which indicates the temperature may be high on somebody, we would always back that up and verify it by using a medical thermometer on the site. So what you're doing here is you're cutting down on the need to measure every single person. But once you get an alarm, which indicates the higher temperature, then we would advise the person to be maybe put to the side and give them 5 minutes to relax, and then someone measure them with a medical thermometer for verification. So there's a temporary installation that we did there back at the start of this as an example. And as you can see, the cameras have got a standard optical channel. And they also then have got the thermal channel on them, which, a thermal lens. So you can see the two different scenarios. You can see the thermal and you can see the normal picture. And I'll just replay these videos again and explain what's going on. The people are going through this channel here. And once they get into this blue region, this is what we would call the detection area. So you can set that up, whatever way you want. Well, it's your security installer that would do that for you. And then once I replay the video again, you'll see the people coming in, and when they get into this region, the camera automatically detects the face and measures temperature in the correct region. So you'll see the temperature results populating on the screen. So there's the guys walking through. And then there you can see 36, 36.6, 36.6. So they're all within the normal temperature range. And then again, there's the thermal image, where you can see the digits slightly more clearly because they stand out a bit more, But bear in mind that the camera can be set up so that it will create an alert if someone is of a high temperature. That can be a flashing light. It can be an audible alert, or I'm sure the guys at Atlas or whoever your CCTV installer would be could use our equipment to create all manner of outputs. So you could close doors, you could basically any electronic piece of equipment, you can set it up if you've got the right know-how, you know. There's a number of products here that I'm going to go into very, very simply, right? And to be quite honest with you, I would break it down into, this range would be what we would call the professional range, and it is designed for operating a bit more further away from the subject. So you can set these cameras up to 9 meters away from the person whose temperature they're measuring. But then this economic range, which is a lot more cost effective and much more popular with people, has actually got a built-in flashing light, and it's got a speaker on the camera as well. So in the previous slide where we did the temporary installation, you know, you don't need to add in any additional speakers or anything like that. The camera will do the announcement to the person if they're over the temperature. Now, the cameras all have got an accuracy of plus or minus 0.5 degrees. That's the margin for error with the camera. Now, if that was satisfactory to you, you could use the camera on its own. But we would recommend using a piece of equipment called a black body calibrator. And what it does is it calibrates the camera so the camera has a better understanding of the ambient temperature in the room, and allows the camera then to improve its accuracy down to plus or minus 0.3 degrees. Now, believe it or not, I know that you might think, well, why is this not more accurate? Most medical thermometers would have plus or minus 0.3 degrees tolerance as well. So you're getting a good level of accuracy with that. And then we also provide tripods as accessories for these so that people can create a solution quite rapidly or temporarily, you know. There's a simple comparison of the two options. Go with the black body. As I said, you've the 0.3 degrees. But if you were to go with the camera on its own, we can give you that 0.5 degrees accuracy. There's also a handheld solution, which you can mount on a tripod and it will work identically to the cameras. Or, you know, obviously an operator can use it in their hand. I would just always be careful, make sure that the operator knows exactly how to use the piece of equipment and ensures that they keep it a similar distance from all the subjects. But that would be, we've had a lot of successful deployments of these, but we would recommend them in scenarios where you can't set up a more permanent fixture with a normal camera. Then we've also got a product which combines that technology into what we within the security industry would call access control. So, you know, access control, I'm sure you have it in your sites where people can access certain areas, certain times, etc., etc. This is basically a product that provides you with facial recognition security on your site. You can also use a card or a fob to allow access for someone or access. And you've also got mask detection built into it, and you've got temperature measurement as well. So you can mix and match the use of this product. So you can deny or authorize access for somebody based on any combination of those factors, if you get what I'm saying. So if you want it to be really strict, they have to be wearing a mask, they have to be under the temperature, they have to have the correct face, and they have to have the correct card. You can make it that secure, you know. And all these then can be very simply, you know, you can get notifications back to different users within the business through the normal sort of linkages that our equipment provides. So you can have emails generated, you can have notifications sent through to specific mobile phones within the business, tablets, all that sort of thing. And you can also create reports as well. So you can create graphs and things like that. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize that this product can do as well is time and attendance. So if you want to monitor the time and attendance of your staff coming on and off the site, you can do it with these products. And if you want a really all singing, all dancing system, we can interact with payroll systems, things like that, to generate an automatic payroll for you, you know. We also have a different version of this, which we call just a standalone version. So it's not as networked as the other product, But if you want something that can be easily deployed and just sits on a stand within the specific area of the business, this is available as well. That's it. That's basically the temperature measurement. Like, there's a lot more detail to the temperature measurement that I've omitted for today, but you know, feel free to get in contact with Pete Gibson. We can advise on this, and I've worked on multiple jobs in Northern Ireland with this product. Like, you know, huge. Like the biggest company in Northern Ireland for staff, I've got this solution top to bottom, and we've installed it in a lot of very impressive sites, you know. So I wanted to give you a bit of an overview of some of the rest of the thermal products that we do as well, and how we would use them for different applications. One of the main ones that people would use thermal for would be to create a secure perimeter for their business. So some of the applications where, you know, thermal technology was traditionally used, because, I mean, let's face it, this technology is up to 30 years of age, really, the principle. It would have been used in high-end things like nuclear power plants, monitoring bridges, water treatment, petrochemical businesses, airports, railroads, obviously military installations. But now we're finding that, you know, like I have a thermal camera in my back garden that didn't cost that much money. If you knew the price of them, you wouldn't believe it. They've been used in universities. They're used massively in prisons at the minute, data centers, and funnily enough, a lot within the farming industry as well. A lot of people can use it. If any of you come from a farming background, I bought my father a thermal scope for Christmas, so we can look at sheep up in the mountains without having to get up there into the fog, you know. So, and the price of these things is way lower than a lot of people's expectation. So the beauty of thermal cameras is, if you've ever seen Predator, you have a fair idea. You can cut through the darkness. You know, there's no such thing as too much or too little light. You know, smoke or fog or any adverse weather conditions, the camera will see through that essentially. And a lot of physical obscurance as well. So this would be a key factor. A lot of perimeters for businesses would have, say, you know, trees and things. With a normal camera, it can be hard to see someone moving through trees, but with a thermal camera, you can just see them perfectly, you know? Here's an example. This is an infrared camera. So that's a standard grainy camera at night. It goes into that green image that we all know. And there's a thermal image of exactly the same thing. So you can see the two guys there clearly, and there's a guy with a gun. So, I mean, that's the difference there. If you had your normal CCTV, you wouldn't be able to tell too much from that image. But then once you see the thermal, you can see the guys moving easily. And here's another example here. So in this image, this is an optical image of a hillside. And there's actually a guy in this image. You can't see him in the color image apart from him flashing this light. But if you move your gaze over to the thermal image, we can see this guy, you know, all of his movements. Can everyone see that okay? Is the movie playing okay for you? Yeah.
Yep.
Then again, you know, because it's so good at differentiating the targets from the normal background, the heat sources, you can do normally, like there's a line of a 250-meter fence. In normal scenarios, that might take 5, 6, 7 cameras to give you accurate alarms along that line. But with a thermal camera, the range is absolutely massive. I mean, look at this example in the video here where the guy's going in and out of the bushes. That's a massive range. And again, a normal camera wouldn't detect that guy within those bushes because it wouldn't have the contrast on the image, you know? And then here's one of my favorite ones. Now, this is a camera with a built-in thermal imager on it and a normal camera lens. So the two work in tandem. So in this short clip, we've got a guy walking around what looks like a sort of a prison fence. He's in this area here. And obviously you can't see him too well in the normal camera, but down here on the thermal, you can see every move that he's making. So you can see how it's very impressive for perimeter detection. As I say, it can often be used as a cost saving compared to traditional cameras because you need less of them. So one of the other ones, I mean, I think some of the companies that are on this meeting today, I've worked with some of you guys on temperature measurement or with your security installer. You can use temperature measurement then obviously to prevent fires on a waste site. What we do here is you can monitor the temperature of your organic or your non-organic waste. And if there's any fire risk or any indication of the temperature rising, we can create an alarm for you at whatever temperature you think is concerning. And then you can take action then hopefully to prevent the fire. So I know that I used it a lot there with waste companies where they've got, how they've explained it to me is they call it MSW. I'm sure you're all familiar with that term. And if a battery goes through a crusher, it can create a spark or a heat sort of event. So then the waste increases in temperature very, very, very slowly over a long period of time until it eventually combusts and catches fire. So you can use the cameras to monitor that, and in most cases you could maybe scramble or move around the rubbish to prevent it from creating a devastating fire, you know. There's a video there of a trash site. Oh, sorry, move forward too quick. That's one we did there in Slovenia. It's a good video that we have, which shows how each one of these cameras, you can actually set up 10 different temperature measurement zones within each camera viewpoint. So you can measure independently 10 different areas. You can actually have up to 21 different temperature measurement areas within a single frame of a camera. So obviously waste dumps, electricity will be used a lot, and in tunnels as well, we use a lot of this equipment. Here we have electricity as well. We can see in a substation where they're monitoring the temperature of, I don't know what these things are called. So you can see how they can detect any issues there if there's a fire issue. And also that's to do with an electricity power station as well, where they're monitoring the temperature. And then we've also got a short video of a kettle heating up where you can measure the temperature. So for a lot of people, anyone that we're demonstrating these products to, I have these products here in the house and I can bring them out to your office to show them to you easily. Although I haven't been out and about too much since the coronavirus thing hit. But usually that's what we do, get a kettle or get something that you know is going to be giving off heat. I bring a thermometer with me and we compare the difference between the kettle and what the camera reads. And provided we understand, you know, the material that the kettle's made from, so if the kettle's made from, say, aluminium or was made from wood, theoretically, you know, you have to understand the material that you're looking at, the distance that you are located from the material. Once you know those two things, you can start measuring temperature accurately. Moving on here. This is fire detection. So all the thermal cameras have built-in fire detection. Now these are a wee bit over the top, but you know, funnily enough, I'm actually looking at this with an authority here about potentially monitoring for gorse fires. So we have these big units here that can sit, you know, they sit up properly. They can be mounted on the ground or on top of something. They can do swoops of vast areas, like up to 10 kilometers. And they'll see pretty much any fire within reason, because there's a few different things. There's an algorithm that understands the movement and the pattern of a fire, which creates an alert within the camera. And then obviously there's the simple heat source as well, the fact that there's heat being given off. So the camera then can zoom in and find exactly where the issue lies. So I don't know, maybe you've all seen that enough. I'll give it one last run. There's the fire there, I think. So obviously, I mean, when we look at that, a human can distinguish that very quickly, but the problem is a human can't be everywhere at all times. The beauty of these cameras is, you know, someone can get an alert in the event of an issue. I'm working in Ireland on you know, moss fires or hill fires, and we've done successful deployments in other countries as well. We've featured in the news. That's basically it. Thanks for your time, folks. I hope that's given you a bit of an overview on some of the thermal stuff that we offer without going too much to death by PowerPoint, you know. Has anyone any questions or?
Yeah, I suppose one there, John. Dowsing systems, connecting the thermal imaging cameras to dowsing systems. It's one that we're looking at the minute. Now we do use the HIC central thermal imaging cameras, and we do have flood points in place. So we're just now at the stage where we're going to line these up to have automated dowsing systems in place.
To be honest with you, David, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't create a dowsing system, so I wouldn't know for sure. But from an engineering standpoint, it would certainly be very doable. I've seen it done over in England. Basically, cameras, like I wouldn't be very technical now, so I'll try. Have you heard of like a dry contact? You know what a dry contact is? It's like a latch or basically like a switch within a camera or an electronic product that activates or deactivates something. So basically, we have dry contacts, volt-free contacts in the majority of our products on the recorders and on the cameras, most instances. And then it's just a matter of someone who's got an engineering or an electronics background tying that in so that the signal will then release the douse bucket, you know. What company are you from, David?
Regen.
Oh, you're a Regen man up in Newry.
That's right, yeah.
And how's the thermal cameras going for you boys?
Oh, brilliant, you know, they're a great job. We have 2 guys pretty much on constant fire watch while the plant is running using the thermal imaging cameras. We've even got one set up around the facility to look at the yard and monitor, you know, what's happening around the facility as well for heat. So yeah, they're a great job. As I say, we're just literally investigating, trying to bring the system along to go automated with the dowsing system. But the problem with that is it's finding the expert advice. You know, it looks like we're going to have to do a lot of the work on it internally, is what we're looking at.
Well, you see, I suppose this might be a private conversation to have at a later date, but you guys up there have got HIC Central. So for the rest of the people in the meeting, right, HIC Central is, we have a piece of software called IVMS 4200, which is the standard software that comes along with every camera that we provide. It's almost like iTunes to an iPhone, you know, it's your piece of software. Now, Regen have got a more advanced piece of software that they did have to pay for compared to the free stuff called HIC Central. Now, in simple terms, David, what HIC Central allows you to do is, without HIC Central, you would just be firing those dry contacts and that's it. You know, they do something. But with HIC Central, you can basically create a map of how one input moves to another input or another output, if you get what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah.
So HIC Central would be more geared up for creating the kind of solution that you're looking at. I could speak to you about that in more detail, like, and I could reach out to some of my colleagues and see what examples of that they've encountered, you know. But I do know that we did one over in England whenever I used to work in England before I moved back here. And there was one, but it was mainly the installer, you know, that provided the solution.
I suppose another question, it's one that we had looked at internally, is the face scanning, you know, the face scanning recognition software. Can it link up to clock-in systems? Have you seen it being able to link up to clock-in systems to scan people in off the face scan on the way in? Because right now we're using 2 systems.
With that, what I would recommend would be, I'm going to share my screen again here when I get to the relevant page. Basically, we would have facial recognition terminals. A marketing term we have for them is called the Minmo range of products. They're the facial recognition access control products. So they can be got with or without the thermal temperature measurement feature we discussed. So any access control product that we do, so time and attendance isn't a piece of equipment. It's a sort of a function of access control. So any of our access control stuff can give you a time and attendance if you need it, David. You know, you could use your fob your face, your fingerprint, any what we call credential at an access point can be fed in through either Hike Central or IVMS 4200 in some scenarios. Are you looking for that to go fully integrated then into the payroll software?
Well, it's really with our North Time data system. We're hoping to tie in the two, you know, but I'll be honest, I guess probably isn't a conversation for me to get too deep into. I generally leave the tax systems to the tech guys, but I suppose, John, maybe you're a man that I should be getting a wee catch up down the road with, you know, off this meeting, I should be getting a wee conversation with you about some of these things and lining up conversations with our own people here, you know.
Well, from a manufacturing standpoint, you use North Time and Data currently, and I've seen the terminals at your place. I was down at your place a few days. You know, from my perspective, North Time and Data are the installers, but the product they use is called ZK Teco, and the software is called Timeware. That costs a lot of money, that Timeware.
Right.
Is my understanding of it anyway. We should be able to give you everything that it does, but again, before I do any time and attendance for people, what I always ask them, David, is for an example of the report that they currently have to make sure that we can integrate, and then a wish list for any other functionality that you'd want to make sure that we can provide it before we would recommend it, you know.
No, brilliant. Well, say, look, John, maybe I'll seek you out someday after one of these meetings and get a wee conversation with you, or line up the conversation with the right people.
That's perfect, David. Thank you.
Cheers, John.
Pete has my details as well.
Ah,
and then,
brilliant.
I mean, there's lots of you guys. I mean, are there any of the rest of you with any questions there? Or?
I
was going to ask a wee question there just about costs, and you mentioned that they can be bought quite cheaply. In terms of the supply model you use, do you rent? I mean, can you contract it out as a rental service, or do you sell them as individual units?
Well,
do you offer a backup support, you know, if they break down, or do you do that in conjunction with the like of Atlas?
Yeah.
A bit more detail on that.
So, Jennifer, our products are sold into the trade. So we make sure that the people that are buying our products are within the security industry. They go through security distributors and things like that. Now, sometimes in an unauthorized way, you can buy Hikvision equipment maybe from eBay or something like that. But, you know, I would always urge you to avoid that, because we serial track the numbers of everything that we sell, and we know exactly who's bought it. So if you call up with an issue and your serial number doesn't match in to, you know, a proper security installer, we don't help, unfortunately. But we work through the likes of Atlas, and then, you know, they get a reduction on the cost of the products, and they get service from us as well. So depending on the nature of the product, the warranty can vary on some products. Generally, it's a 3-year warranty with most products, but for some of the higher end category products now, like the thermal we're discussing here, like not the thermal for temperature measurement, but of people, but the thermal for perimeter detection and measuring other temperatures, it's got a 5-year warranty as well. So we give a manufacturer's warranty on that, which is generally, it's a sort of we send out a replacement unit straight away. So if Pete Gibson rang up and said, Jennifer's rang me and said her thermal camera's failed, we'll actually send out via distribution that new camera to Pete straight away, so that whenever he gets to the site, he just takes the old one down and puts the new one in. And then whenever he sends us back the old one, if it's still working, we'll send him a bill. But if it's not working, then we write it off, you know.
And what is the take? Do you recycle the units, or what happens to? Are they all part of the WE electrical waste?
In terms of, I could get you information on that, Jennifer, but it would be dealt with through our distribution and our channel management team. So it wouldn't be something that I would be overly privy to. But at the same time, we would take a lot of different considerations very
okay, so you tend to supply
seriously.
them as sold units rather than a rental service. We couldn't rent the service.
Well, some installers give you a rental service, don't they, Pete?
I think some do, John, although most, Jennifer was just going to say, most would be on a sold basis, you know, because it's sort of unlikely then you can use it elsewhere. So It would normally be sold. Now, I would probably guess your concern is maybe just you're thinking for short-term use, and then what would find the longer-term use for something you buy. But I think from John's presentation there that most of the thermals have another, function outside of the sort of the COVID scenario. So, I guess what you're sort of saying is, putting in a cost expenditure now that, fingers crossed come May will all be not needing from terms of Corona. But, as John was saying there are different scenarios, then you could use it within the business. So I don't think it would be a lost investment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I've just remembered that I didn't specify the most important thing about these cameras as well. The temperature measurement for the humans has to be indoor.
Has to be, sorry, what was that? Has to be?
Has to be indoor, darling. So it needs to be, that's for obvious reasons,
Yeah, so all the measurement you need to be standing within, a reception area or a room of some description. It can't be done outside.
Is there any other questions for John? If not, I have a techie one. Again, this is paranoia setting in. John, if somebody buys one of your systems through Atlas World and a recognized distributor, is there any warranty against viruses or people, particularly viruses, being embedded in the system anywhere? The word of Donald Trump here in fear.
We would be one of the companies, there's no point in lying, that Donald Trump is not a fan of, it's totally by virtue of us being Chinese. There's not really much else to it, to be honest, that I know of anyway. But it gives people concern and stuff. So I suppose, Jim, what you're saying is about sort of privacy concern nearly and that sort of thing.
That's the basis of it.
Well, to be honest, Pete would be able to explain to you that really and truly, there's no such thing as a vulnerable or a non-vulnerable camera. I mean, our products are like any other internet connected product. They're vulnerable to cyber attacks and that sort of thing. Now, we work very hard and we work cyber security is a massive emphasis for the company. And we've all the certification and all that sort of thing that, if you want to take us to task, we can provide you with all that information. We get used in government facilities, military settings, and we have to have all that, those credentials correct. But to be honest with you, Jim, the simple way of explaining it is it's to do with the computer network or the network that the equipment sits on as well. You can have a vulnerable network or you can have a closed down or a secure network. And what that means is basically you could buy a £30,000 camera from us. And if you don't take the right precautions, somebody somewhere could interact with it in some way. But if you've got a closed down and a secure network environment, it's totally safe. And the same rule applies for that £30,000 camera as a £2 camera from China that you would buy from eBay. If you know what I mean, you could make that secure as well. But we have the highest credential that I know of within the cyber security arena is one called FIPS 140-2. And I could chat about this, carry on all day, because this is sort of my bread and butter, but it's the one for American government building use. And there's actually only 3 companies in the world whose equipment meets that specification, and we're one of them. Now, there's no point in me lying to you. We've been taken off American government buildings because of the fact that we're Chinese, but we still have that accreditation. And even though other companies sometimes point it out, there's some UK-based companies, for example, that would sometimes, when they're getting into a mud fighting match with me, they would say that we're Chinese and we're taking off government buildings. But the thing is, those companies will never get on the government buildings anyway because they can't meet that classification to be used. So hopefully my friend Joe Biden will get us back on these buildings, It's fine over here in the UK, thankfully, at the moment, You
obviously move in much higher circles than we do, John.
Well, in fairness, our company would have a lot of, our sales manager or director, who Pete would probably have seen or met before, a guy called Gary Harmer. We have a cyber security team that work with a guy called Tony Porter, who's the Information Commissioner's Office. So he's the highest authority within the UK on cybersecurity, and he sets out the laws about the use of facial recognition and cybersecurity and all that stuff. So we've worked with him, along with other manufacturers as well, to develop a standard which has been adopted across the UK. And like recently, we've got, there's a guy there that works for Hikvision in Europe, who has helped me with some cybersecurity questions, some really advanced ones that would be way beyond my pay grade. And he actually was the highest authority within the European Union and helped develop like GDPR guidelines and all that. So he actually works for Hikvision now. So that's a good indictment of how good our stuff is, you know, from that perspective.
So with him to thank for GDPR.
Pardon?
I said with him to thank for GDPR then.
Well, his name's Fred Streifland now, but he's not as much of a, he's a very jolly kind of chap, Pete. He's not as much of a stickler for things in real life as you would have thought, you know.
That's grand.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, just before you go on there.
Yeah.
See your thermal imaging cameras then, do they just take like a surface temperature? So I'm thinking of, say I'm standing looking at a waste stockpile and I want to take a temperature of it. Does it just take a temperature of the outside of the stockpile, yeah, or could it detect where there's any hot spots, maybe right in the middle of the stockpile?
What happens, you see, Justine, is it's not X-ray vision, right? So it is only looking at the surface of the waste pile. But here's the surface area of your waste pile is going to be, let's say, 8 degrees within a shed, the normal, between 8 and 20 degrees or whatever it is, you know, the normal temperature. So whenever you're setting up the camera for the temperature alarms and pre-alarms, you actually just set your alarm at quite a low threshold, so just about 30 degrees, you know, so maybe it indicates like a 10-degree rate, you know, rise in your temperature of your waste.
Yeah.
In which case you then act, you know, you don't wait to that, because if it's 30 degrees in the surface, it could be, I don't know.
Yeah, you imagine.
A lot warmer on the inside. So yeah, it's important to note that it's not, it can be used in the perimeter detection thing to give you that visual sort of through the tree branches and stuff, but the temperature measurement's only at the surface. But do you know much about temperature measurement or anything, Justine, like emissivity or reflectivity of materials?
That technical lingo, not in a massive amount of detail, no.
Well, that's how you calculate it. It'll be based on your waste will either be organic or non-organic, and it'll have an emissivity value. So everything emits this infrared radiation, right? And there's two values. There's emissivity and there's reflectivity. So a piece of plastic that's 30 degrees compared to a piece of aluminium that's 30 degrees. To a thermal camera, they both look very different. But once you give the camera that understanding, once you tell it the value of then it starts to, you know, make sense to the device then. But yeah, you can't tell what temperature the inside of the waste is.
Right.
It's just the surface.
But as you say, John, if you record a raise in the temperature of the surface temperature, then you know that's coming from somewhere. So as you say, if you set a low enough threshold, it'll allow you then investigation time.
Yeah, it would be indicative then that there's something certainly going on there.
So the human body measurement cameras operate between 30 degrees and 45 degrees, and then they have the accuracy of 0.5 degrees because there's such a small sort of threshold there. But with the normal temperature measurement cameras, they operate from minus 40 degrees right up to 350 degrees, and they're accurate to plus or minus 2 degrees, Justine. So, you know, you put them on that rubbish, it will give you a good indicator if there's a heat rise, you know.
Oh, that's great, John. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Any more?
It seems to have all gone quiet, John. You've obviously done a good job.
Bored everybody to tears. I'm sure you're all ready for a cup of tea or something.
Oh, it was a great presentation.
This is one of these things which has obviously got a much wider application than just COVID-19. And COVID will be with us, for the foreseeable future here, never mind vaccines or anything else. So our precautions will not be wasted and not be in vain. So there is a lot of things that we can do with thermal imaging in the waste industry. So John, thank you very much for your time and for your presentation.
No problem, and thanks very much. And if anyone wants to get in touch, sure, Pete can give you my details, and we can work on something if you need help. All right?
Yep, just drop me a line. I'll get you in touch.
Okay.
I'll let you go, folks. Enjoy the rest of your meeting and take care now. All the best.
Thanks, Sean.
All the best.
Take care. We'll be in touch.
Now, technology start. This is where the technical piece comes in. Tony, are you still there?
Yep, I'm left.
Right. And how are we doing then for your presentation? Are we ready to rock and roll?
I sent Rachel the shared folder. I think you're going to collate it.
Do you just want me to play those videos, Tony? Is that?
Yeah, that's all it was. Yeah.
Oh, grand. Okay. Let me just see then. I'll give this a go.
I volunteered Connor because I think he's more of a face for TV than myself.
I think I'll just have to play these one by one then, okay?
Hello, and welcome to Andor Technology. My name is Connor Hamill, and I'm one of the engineers that will work here. We manufacture cameras that are used in research. Actually, some of our cameras are used in researching into the coronavirus. And we're going to talk you through some of the steps that we're doing to protect our employees.
Is that coming through all right, guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so whenever we come on premises, we're instructed to pause the NI COVID app, and that is because Andor premises is a COVID safe premises. So because we're meeting all the guidelines, it's a COVID safe environment. Okay, so when you come into the building, we have sanitizing, and we also have a system that keeps traffic from gathering too much. We also have a system at the moment that we use what's called agile desks, and we have an app where our employees who are working from home and want to come in on the premises, they book at a desk using an app. And here we have little cupboards that each employee can use. So when they book in the app, they get the number of their cupboard, and inside the cupboard it has all the equipment they will need to come in and work. So here you have your mice and So this is one of our desks, and as you can see, we have the perspex dividers that keep the area secure. And this is another thing we've implemented is our little desk mat. So whenever in time the cleaner will do that, and once we have finished with the desk, in the afternoon, come around and set that around the desk, and then the cleaning staff know come in that a desk that needs to be cleaned. So another thing we've implemented is just better tracking of the cleaning. So here we have a sign sheet checked every day by the supervisor of the cleaning staff, just to give reassurance that the area is being cleaned. So another thing that we've implemented here is a one-way system. This is just to protect our employees and stop congregating and stop people coming too close to each other. So if you follow along, here we have a corridor, and you can see on the ground we have arrows that point the direction that of the travel. So in this area, for example, you have to go out through these doors. You're unable to come back through. Another thing that we have implemented here is some extra visuals. So here we have some visuals on the ground that just remind us of what 2 meters looks like. And so you can see standing in the center, this is kind of arc shows yeah, what 2 meters looks like if you're standing and talking to somebody. Okay. So here we're in the toilets, and a couple of additional measures that we have added into the toilets. The first one is new taps. So these taps are push. So you have to press the tap and the water comes on for a limited period. So it just means less people are handling the taps. The second one is automated hand sanitizing. So you put your hand underneath and it recognizes it's there and will spray out the soap. Again, just to prevent and reduce the number of touch points. Another measure we have implemented down in production is this kind of guard, which allows an engineer or technician just to step inside it in order to get very close to the work. So it means that when trains happening, that 2 people can get very close to each other without breaking the social distancing guidelines as well. So another protection measure that we have added in order to reduce the number of touch points and prevent people having to press open doors around the building, we added these fire stops. So this means that doors can remain open throughout the building, and if the fire alarm goes off, which every Tuesday we test the fire alarm, these door stops will close in the event of a fire. Another measure we've added around the building are additional hand sanitizing stations, just like this one right here. And this is just filled with alcohol, cleaning fluid, and again, just to give people a chance to keep their hands clean, and they're spread around the building, so you don't have to travel very far to find the next one. So thanks very much for watching this short video into Andor and some of the steps and precautions that we're taking to help protect our employees from coronavirus. I hope it's beneficial, and I hope it maybe give some ideas. So thank you very much.
Okay, big thanks to Conor there for his presentation. Any questions for Tony?
Tony, could I ask a question about the mobile unit, the Perspex screen? Was that custom made, or did you get a supplier to make that?
We got suppliers to make that, so we engaged with a couple of suppliers. So we've had a few different suppliers making different versions. So in production, there's a different type, a bit more rustic looking, and then in the offices, a bit more smarter looking. So they are. So.
And would you have any in use in an outdoor setting at all?
No, there's no outdoors. What we have done here, we've actually purchased a lot more picnic tables. There's no meetings or anything happens on outside with the current weather anyway. But we have signage put on the picnic tables. Only 2 people allowed at each one, and they're all spaced appropriately. So you're outdoors in the fresh air, so you won't need it.
Yeah, we had been, we have a bit of an issue at our recycling centres in that we're asking people for ID, as in proof of residency of Belfast. But when we have the markings like you have, you know, the 2 meters on the ground, we also have cones in place as well as a sort of 3D visual, in addition to the stickers and the zoning on the ground. But people tend to immediately pull down their car windows, and even though our staff are communicating to keep the windows up for both, you know, both parties' safety. So we had been thinking, you know, is there some sort of mobile perspex screen? Initially, we'd been thinking of, you know, the wee units you would get like at a fairground, so they're a bit more static, and that you would operate like a microphone, a speaker.
That's a solution we done here for our stores. So we put a glass partition in, which it's slatable, and we've got a two-way speaker, so you don't need to hold the button, you just talk. So that's exactly what we've done. Right. So your guys, imagine in the Belfast Council, they're sitting in their wee booth outside.
Well, we don't have booths. We've not, so it's with no physical barriers at the moment. So that's what sort of along the lines we're thinking of, you know, particularly in winter.
Aye. Well, the council ones I've seen, Lisburn and Belfast and Candy Weather, they do have the wee outdoor booths. Maybe not them all, but
yeah, they have a hut, as we call it, as they go in, but it's like enclosed on 3 sort of sides, but there's an open door. So
I can give you supplier details if need them. Contact me separately, and I'll try and get you the speaker details.
Brilliant, thank you, Tony. Thanks.
No problem.
I'm just wondering, has Raymond joined us? Because I'm sure Raymond could have told us all sorts of things about toilets and automatic taps and all the rest of it. Any other questions for Tony? I have one, Tony, in the silence. What about the durability of your floor markings? Do you find you have to replace them often?
We did. So I've started here in March, and there was quite a large project to get done in a relatively short space of time. I was coming in as everybody was leaving. So we replaced those signage about 6 to 8 weeks ago. So they are pretty fresh, the ones that you've seen there in the video. So, but the first COVID inoculation happened today. So we're hopeful by June, July, everybody should have took up the vaccine, and hopefully that's the end of it. So I hope we may not need the signage for much longer.
Okay, any other questions?
Not a question, but just an observation that those floor markings look really well, actually.
We used a company called Minprint.
Who, sorry?
Minprint.
Minprint.
M-I-N print. Minprint.
Minprint. Yeah.
Just it was interesting to see about the cameras from earlier on. So that's actually what we do here, just with the HikVision. So you may have heard of the latest discovery from NASA, the found water on the moon. That was our cameras. So it was. So it was from a nerd's point of view, which I am. I found it a wee bit interesting from the HikVision earlier. So
there we go. Well, it's gone quiet, Tony. So thank you very much indeed.
Yep, no problem.
And
thank you, Tony.
Information shared.
Yep.
Great. Going to turn back now to Justine. See what the latest is in the world of HSE. Thanks, Tony.
No problem.
In terms of HSE, I folks, not a lot has changed since our last meeting last month. Just with the additional restrictions, we continue to work from home, and that's meant the number of proactive inspections naturally has went down. We are going out to regular complaints, COVID complaints, and any serious incidents. Encouragingly, we haven't actually had any clusters reported in any waste facilities by the PHA. We have had in other areas that our group looks after, so hopefully that's testament to the industry implementing the control measures and them being effective. I would just ask you not to fatigue of, making sure social distancing is in place. I know we've been going through this for quite a while now, so naturally that can happen. In terms of INs and PNs, nothing new since the last meeting. Whenever I look back then at RIDORs coming up to the end of the year, we're sitting at 33 RIDORs reported through for the waste industry this year. And I'll just highlight to you that the main areas these are coming from are slips, trips and falls and manual handling injuries. So maybe it could be an area that you maybe want to revisit in the new year. So a lot of sprained ankles, a lot of hurt backs. Obviously within this industry, there is an awful lot of manual handling that goes along with the job. So maybe just looking at refreshing manual handling training, making sure risk assessments are up to date, employees do have the correct information and training, and jobs essentially aren't rushed. So as I said, I think in the last meeting, January is probably a good time to get employees back in to refresh them on your COVID controls, and maybe just give them a bit of a general health and safety refresh as well. But thankfully, we haven't had any fatalities reported in the industry, touch wood, this year. In terms of our more serious incidents that we have actually went out and investigated, they have both involved vehicle and pedestrian contact. So people who could have come out an awful lot worse than what they did, and we're quite lucky it wasn't any worse. But hopefully with the vaccine coming in next year, hopefully the cases go down and we can get back out on the ground a bit more and have a sense of normality. But that's all that's going on with us.
Great. Any questions for Justine? That's a good sign, Justine. Everybody's going quiet.
Well, hopefully we can get out to see you a bit more next year now.
Oh, you're always welcome, Justine.
Michael's first on the list there now. We were chatting earlier on, so.
You got a new kettle, Justine?
Can I just raise another wee thing actually, in terms of COVID controls? Now, a disclaimer that there may be other providers available, but there is a new thing. It's called Nano Self Clean. And what these are little sticky adhesive pads that you put on touch points. Now, they actually came to HSENI's attention through a big food manufacturer where we've seen them out on their premises. But essentially what they are is they're stickers. You stick them on your door handles, your common touch points, and they actually self-clean. So they have, it's called a silver ion antimicrobial technology, which means it actually inhibits the growth of viruses and germs on the surface, and then over time it will actually work to repel them as well. Now, these self-adhesive stickers last for up to 3 months. It just depends on the amount of traffic and how many times they're being touched, but it may be something that some of you want to have a look at. So they're called Nano Self-Cleaning.
Nano?
Nano Self-Clean. And we actually have them in HSENI offices now in Lattice as well, because I was calling in to do some printing last week and I seen the facilities guys putting them up, and I stopped, and that was the first I'd actually seen them or heard of them, and I asked what they are and thought that's a good idea.
No, that's brilliant. We were looking at them earlier in the year, but they weren't sticky labels at that stage. They were actually fixed handles. So we investigated, but it was quite cost prohibitive at that time.
No, these are self-adhesive, so basically like a sticker.
Brilliant. And I wonder, would it protect or would it kill the bacteria of other things other than COVID that you generally be concerned about, in general?
Well, certainly there's information on their website in terms of all the testing that they've done to prove that it, is effective for coronavirus. So you would think or hope that other viruses and other germs, would be affected for them too. But certainly I think it's worth having a look at.
Brilliant.
Those wee fire stops that we got here, they're very inexpensive as well. I think they're about 60, 70 quid each. So they just mean you can keep your doors open constantly throughout the day. There's only one supplier, MKB, you call them, MKB Fire. So I would recommend those as well. That was in the wee video.
You told me. There's 2 suppliers.
All right, okay. Last time we got them installed in April, so maybe they got a second supplier then.
I know those door guard units are really good. Like we would put them in, because we did an awful lot of our care homes and social housing and things like that. We would use those regularly.
Yeah,
they're a great job. They look fantastic. But what about power supply? Just out of curiosity, what sort of power supply to it?
So there's 2 options. You can get the battery ones for existing doors, which is what we have done, or if you're putting brand new doors in, you can get them wired into the mains, and it's obviously linked to your landlord fire alarm panel.
Okay, good job.
Just a word of caution, David. They come with a little panel that screws into the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Don't screw it in where there's underfloor heating.
Oh no. Bit of a flood coming.
Yep. Not a good look.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, really create a slip and trip hazard there, then.
That's it. And the other thing, of course, if your fire doors are sitting open all day, remember that to check that the self closers are still going to pull the doors fully
Yeah.
closed at the end of the day. Just going back to any other business there. The vaccine question: will waste workers be a priority? Has anybody heard anything in the meantime?
Yeah, the NHS have came out with a list of people who's getting priority. I would imagine it's care home staff are number one, along with the people in their over 80. I think that's predominantly who's dying of the virus is people in their 80s with 2 serious medical conditions. So that's the sort of logic there. So I would imagine waste workers would be fairly low down the list.
Right. What I will do, David, is I will check with my colleagues across the water and see have they heard anything in the meantime. But it might be early days yet, just to see where we are. The other thing, what I would say on the issue of coronavirus is lots of plans go wrong in the course of implementation. And this is very, very early days. So don't be surprised if there's hiccups or major disasters somewhere along the road in the rollout of these vaccines. So while we're looking optimistically at springtime and summertime, let's also plan for the future. Always plan for the worst and expect the best. So as an industry, I think the message that we want to put out is, hey, don't let your guard down here, guys. If we let our guard down now, this is going to come back and bite us. And as Justine has said, and very encouragingly, so far we haven't had any reported clusters to the PHA within the waste industry. So that's a really good credit to everybody. So leave that one for a moment. Work-related stress. And Nicola, can we turn to you just for a moment or two? Have you any further ideas about that? I know Justine has got other things lined up for us.
Well, I think in an awful lot of ways, people don't understand what the stress response actually is and how it works to our advantage, which is a biological response. I think there's a lot of lack of knowledge out there, both for individuals and as managers. What happens to the body when people are put under too much pressure? If they're put under too much pressure too often, how that can result in it becoming chronic stress. The stress response being in such a way that you have the hypothalamus in the brain, away go the messages, down to the adrenals, and out goes your cortisol and your adrenaline. And that's really your fuel to get whatever it is done. And that's a marvelous thing for the body. And that's a fantastic thing that keeps us all going. And that's why we're here today. But if your destination is another stressful situation, it is not given the body time enough for it to come back to normal. And therefore it's becoming into a chronic stress. And certainly with COVID, I think it has exacerbated things. So really understand. Now, I would be more than happy to talk to anybody about this. This is an area which I've done quite a bit of research. So I'd be very, very willing to talk to anyone. But you see, once we understand what it is, if we put someone, or maybe give someone a workload that is maybe too much than you can expect, if we understand that this is actually happening to that person, and if we do this tomorrow and the next day and whatever, this could cause harm, maybe that would give us a reason to look at it and really think what we're doing and to work together to reduce the risk. So that's sort of my thing on it, but it's one of my, as you'll all know by meetings, it's one of my passions.
It is. So in terms of looking at a survey, if anybody's interested in being part of a survey, could you contact Nicola separately?
It would be a marvellous idea, to see where we are now. As I said, and I don't want Justine to put HSE&I under pressure that everybody's going to get in contact about maybe doing their survey. But certainly, if we could have a number of organisations throughout Northern Ireland who would be willing to measure what stress is in the morning, it will give you quite a few surprises of both good areas and poor areas. But we can look at to see whether there's maybe different kind of factors that are similar in all the waste industry, or whether there's different organisations are maybe doing better at things. So to have a measurement, to know where we are now, might be able to give us an idea of what we can do to improve things in the future. What do you think?
Sounds good, Nicola. I think there'll be a lot of guys very receptive to giving it a wee bit of focus. I know I will anyway, you know, certainly in the new year, get a look at it.
David, the thing about it is, many years when I've been training and things like that, it's really a fantastic thing to see men taking an interest in this now, because I can remember a time when you talked about stress and they glazed over. And really, in actual fact, it's very, very nice to see men coming out and saying, right, okay, we need to do something about this. So that's music to my ears.
I'll definitely be involved with that one.
I'll help with whatever way. If I can do anything for anyone, please do get in touch with me. There's no problem whatsoever. Chat to people, be there for people. No problem. I'm here.
Nicola, thank you.
I think if there's an award attached to it, you know, if you are going to do recording to see what your level is in work, and you promise to get to a certain level. We mentioned last week about scores in the doors.
Yes.
You know, if you can sort of try to award the scheme somehow, some recognition, maybe that would get more people involved in it. And
what about the WISHNI Ambassador Awards, Jim? Is there any sort of possibility in that case of saying, well, let's see which one of the waste industry companies, organisations are doing the best with regards to work-related stress? So there could be some sort of measurement and see what people have done. Is there any way that could be done, so that what we'll be doing, as well as looking at injuries, is looking at wellness, looking at illness, that we're actually looking at mental health as well?
Right. We did have a couple of surveys in the last, not surveys, but we did have a couple of action plans in the last number of years. So let us come back to that and have a wee think about that in early January.
Okay.
And then, as you can imagine, that the Ambassador Awards are not going to be an in-person event this year, and it'll probably be slightly later on in the year. So
well, we can get into black tie for one of these meetings, and we can all have a glass of champagne in our hand in our own house. We don't have to drive or anything like that, and really have a real good hoolie.
That's it. The bar is very limited here in Newcastle, I would have to say.
Oh, that can be sorted out, don't you worry.
That's good. Yes, we'll be looking forward to that. Any other items of any other business?
Just if you are going to be doing, like, gauging people's sort of awareness and their scores, if you engage with all the workers in the waste industry, because I know, having worked there, you know, companies like to say, oh, staff turnover is only such and such a %, but they don't seem to include the normal workers.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do the mental health, also include the workers, because having worked in there, like, I can tell you, the staff turnover is the highest industry I've ever worked in.
The thing is, Tony, is to, and you're absolutely right, is to understand that every single person could be affected by stress, from the very highest person in the organisation, from the employer right down to someone an operative. So it's a good thing to measure everybody's stress and see how we're doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to think some companies use it as a tick box and hide over the actual figures.
No, that shouldn't be ever, because it's every bit as important, if not more so, because people who are suffering from these sort of things, it's not as visual as what it is when you get a plaster on your leg. You know, it's a situation where, and if it's done in an anonymous way and measured, it's a very, very good way to see how we're doing.
Okay. Right, folks. If there's any other topics?
Jim, there's just one that I thought of there. I put it up on the LinkedIn page. There's a wee grant going at the minute, just in case anyone's doing any energy efficiency works. We work with the MSNI a lot in terms of grants and things like that, so we're always aware of what's happening. And they've got I don't know how it's COVID-19 related, but I think that's just everything these days. The energy efficiency capital grant. So I think you can get up to £80,000 towards improving your energy efficiency of your site. The only thing is, I think it needs to be done and submitted by, I think, the 10th of January or the 8th of January or something like that. So
7th of January.
7th of January. Yeah. So yeah, just if any of you are looking at projects or anything like that, and there's 80k of funding there sitting for you folks.
The work has to be completed by the 19th of March as well. So it does.
All right. That was it, Jim, just in case anyone was aware of it or wasn't aware.
Good, yeah. Anything which is helpful like that, Pete's always very welcome. Folks, if there's nothing else, big thanks to Tony and Connor, to John as well, who has left us, and we'll contact John separately. And again, big thanks to Pete for time and the technology.
No problem.
So if there's nothing else, look, keep safe and a happy Christmas to you all.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All the best.
All the
people.
best.
Good luck.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.